Hey everybody, we're back, and today we're going to be talking about adjusting babies. I know it's one of your favorite subjects is babies.
Right.
What are the symptoms, I guess, that parents would know that their baby might need a chiropractic adjustment?
Right. So some of the symptoms are you'll notice when you are holding the baby that they're only comfortable turning in one position. You try to turn them in the other position and they wind up going back to one position, say turning to the left. They're easier to breastfeed on one side than the other. They just can't seem to latch on. Their shoulders might be higher. They might have an arched back and they might have colic. Those are all signs and symptoms of a possible subluxation. So definitely we want to check the babies who have those symptoms, but we want to check the babies after each delivery, because delivery is a hard thing on the baby as well as the mama.
Mm-hmm. Getting squeezed out of the
getting squeezed out, right.
What are the things that cause a subluxation? I think we kind of alluded to it, that delivery probably is a big thing.
Right, the delivery, but also the babies when they're in the womb, they can get in a position and then they're stuck there for a while. So for instance, there are many different positions that babies can get stuck in. So this is our little baby doll. And so when they're in the womb and they're head down, they can come out face first. So their little head is face first and you can kind of see what's happening. Their neck is way in extension. So when they're going through the birth process, they're being pushed down in that position. Oof. Yeah, very. I mean, I feel it already. Or their head can be so far forward. This is called an occiput presentation, where their head is curled down, their chin is tucking onto their chest. That's another one. Can you imagine being pushed down like that for a long
it's like almost claustrophobic
period of time? Right, exactly. And then the other one is a breech presentation, where they're coming butt first, and so their feet are like this, and so they're being jammed through the hole like that. And then one of them is also a shoulder presentation. So their shoulder, their arm is down first. That's so now their head is tilted to the side, and there's a lot of jamming and squeezing on the bones of the neck and of the upper back and so forth. So they can be in that position for a while, even weeks before the birth, and then they go through the birth process.
Oh, wow.
Right, so now they've been stuck that way for a while, and then they're squeezed through the birth process. And so that can be, you can imagine, very traumatic. And then the birth, when they go through the canal, it's important for babies to go through the canal. That has a lot of benefits. But then are they caught? Is the baby caught? Or as far as the doctor who is receiving the baby, do they just wait for the baby to be born? Or do they have to pull? Do they have to use forceps? Do they have to manipulate the head and neck? All these things are things that are very important for the birth process, but are causing trauma on the baby. So what I do want to tell you about is the baby's breathing centers are in the bottom of the brain, and this is called the medulla oblongata. And so when we are pulling on their neck, that breathing center is being pulled as well. So we definitely want to make sure that the neck is clear of subluxation to take any pressure that might be occurring on that breathing center. And so I think it's very important for all babies after their birth to come in and be adjusted, or at least checked, if nothing else. You were, Jens, my first baby that was born the way in the Bradley method, and so you were adjusted hours after your birth. We were checking on you hours after your birth.
I believe it. I think that personally, that my hypothesis, I haven't proven this at all, is why I am so tall. I think chiropractic adjustments allowed me to naturally get my tall gene expressed.
Right, yeah, I believe that too.
So can you tell us a little bit more about, we learned a lot about the trauma and everything and all the different positions and all the things that can happen that can cause issues, and we talked about the breathing center, but can you tell us a little bit more about what is subluxation itself is?
Yes, right. So the brain is what tells our bodies what to do. The brain is in control of everything that we do. And so the brain has a cord that goes down through the spine. That's, of course, the spinal cord. And then from every level of our 26 bones, and by the way, babies have more than that because they have a sacrum that's in pieces and a coccyx and so forth. So they have more bones and then they grow together. But through the 26 vertebral bones come vertebral nerves that go to the organs. So if the joints are out of alignment, like I showed you on the spine, the baby being tilted to the spine, that can pull the joints out of alignment and they get stuck. And so then those nerves that exit through each one of those 26 bones is pinched and irritated, and the nerve flow from the brain to the body cannot happen. It is very acutely diminished. And so then the body starts working without ease, or in other words, dis-ease. And so then we start getting signs and symptoms. Initially, sometimes we don't get any symptoms because it takes a while for that dis-ease to start showing itself. So that's why with babies, it's good to get them checked for an adjustment before they start having signs and symptoms.
That makes sense. Can you tell me what the difference is then? I mean, we talked about that. The babies have more bones. They have the coccyx and the sacrum that aren't fused together yet. So it's got to be different adjusting a baby than it is an adult, right? For me versus me as a baby, right? That would be different.
Right. Yeah. So with babies, they don't have the muscular tension that we do, you know, as we are standing on gravity, as we start walking and so forth. Those babies' muscles get stronger, but initially they're not strong. Those muscles aren't strong. They have to be exercised in order to be strong. So the muscles are not going to hold the joints out of alignment like in an adult. So with babies, it's a very gentle thrust. Sometimes I just use my pinky fingers to adjust those joints back into the correct alignment. They're so much easier, and the results that we get are so much faster because they don't have that muscular tension. But we get the nerve flow going, the connection between the brain at 100%, the body expresses health. And that's what we want for the babies, is to give them a good start. Mm-hmm. Now, as the children get older and they start becoming toddlers and whatnot, you have you've seen, or we have all seen, that toddlers begin to fall down. That's why they call toddlers. They toddle and they fall. And so those babies can get knocked out of alignment too. And so we want to check those babies as they're growing so that when they grow in alignment. If we were to leave those subluxations and they start growing with that misalignment, then that subluxation is going to grow there, and it's much harder to address that one as they get older than if we check them when they're young, before the subluxation sets and is a habitual subluxation. It's better to check them and get them adjusted very easily while they're growing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I want to stress the fact that it's a gentle adjustment and not easy, right? So you had to learn how to do
right.
this.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
can you tell us a little bit about that? What it took to learn how to do this?
Right. Well, after I graduated from the chiropractic college, I was actually pregnant with you, and so I went through a childbirth that's called Bradley Husband Coach Childbirth, and that taught me a lot of the birth process. And by the way, there is a wonderful Bradley coach here in town. Her name is Gabrielle Men, and she does Bradley Husband Coach Childbirth. And I used to be a teacher, and I'm not certified anymore. But I learned the process, the natural process of childbirth. And that made me so interested that I went further and I got further studies. I had to study another 3 years in order to get my fellow of the ICPA, which is the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association. So I studied for a really long time to learn all the ins and outs of babies, of adjusting babies, and my technique in adjusting, very gently adjusting the babies so they have 100% nerve flow.
Wow, that's like a whole nother degree.
Right. It was. Yes.
That's amazing. Okay, so what are the, we talked about some of the children growing up, right, and then toddlers and stuff like that. So what are some of the real benefits that we can see from getting adjusted from being from infant or baby stages on up? Like I know I alluded to being tall, but not everybody's gonna.
Right, not everybody will be tall. When the brain, like I said, the brain is the master computer of everything. And if a brain and the spinal cord are clear of subluxation, then what happens is the body's ability to adapt to stresses, whether that be a physical stress, an emotional stress, or a chemical stress, the body is able to adapt. And it might have what we call symptoms of maybe being sick, because some people think that a fever, oh, I'm sick because I have a fever, when actually a fever is part of our wonderful immune system ability to raise the temperature of our body. For instance, viruses, they like 98.6. They thrive in 98.6. Well, when we raise our body temperature to above 98.6, 100, 101, 102, 103, well, viruses cannot survive in that temperature. Mm-hmm. So the body will bring up the temperature and kill the virus, and once the virus is killed, then the body will come back down to 98.6. That is an example of our immune system. Well, when the body can communicate fully with itself, that's what it's going to do. It's going to turn on the immune system, and it's going to fight viruses, bacteria, and so forth. Now, again, we might have what we think are symptoms. Oh, I'm sick. But that is not a symptom of sickness. It's actually a symptom that your immune system is working correctly. Oh. So, 100% nerve flow, our bodies are going to be so much healthier than somebody who is immune compromised. Maybe they have had a subluxation for a long period of time. Maybe they don't eat well, like we all were in the fast food kind of situation. And so those things will help to make a subluxation in the body, and then the body cannot speak fully to itself. So again, keeping everybody subluxation free is how we're going to keep people healthier.
And that makes so much sense, wanting to start that from such an early age, and the development of a baby, right? I mean, we have all those things that are growing and need to be growing in the right places and in the right ways and stuff. It really makes sense why we would want to start getting those subluxations and the brain talking to the body from early age as possible.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
All right. So say I'm a dad. Say I'm a new dad. I'm not, but if I was, and I was to bring my baby in, what would can you walk me through what some of that process would be, what you would need to know?
Right. So when you came in, I would need a history of the baby, of the birth of the baby, of the what the process was. I mean, was it a natural birth? Was it a C-section? I need to know everything that you can remember about the birth process, but I also need to know before the birth. Was it a stressful situation? Were you worried about money? And we're all worried about money, but were you worried about money? Was it a premier situation where you're welcoming this baby, or was it a hard process of thinking, oh, I'm bringing a new life into the world? All those mental things are important too, because they add to the process of the labor. And then afterwards, what is the baby? Are there any signs and symptoms? Are you noticing that they're crying? Are you noticing the things that I told you before? Are they always turned to one side? So I want to get all that information from you, because also, are you fearful of being a new dad? Are you comfortable with being a dad? Because the baby will feel that. They will translate that. And we need to make the dad and the mom as comfortable as possible in this process to help that baby grow and nurture in a nice, calm time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So after we do the history and then we find out all about what the pregnancy was like, and what it's like at home now, and what the birthing process was like. What's it like examining a baby? Because they can't say it hurts here, right? They just go, ah!
Right.
So.
Well, let's go into the other room, and I'll
Sure.
show you on our little baby here how I do the adjustment.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Alright guys, we're back. We're here in our exam room 2, and we're going to go over what the exam and adjustment of a baby is like, right?
Right, exactly. But
Cool.
before we do that, I wanted to show you my Rosie doll.
Okay.
So the Rosie doll, it is shows us of our connection energetically.
Okay.
So our bodies are formed of atoms, and atoms have protons and electrons and neutrons, right?
Mhm.
And that makes an electromagnetic force or power. And so you and I are connected by that force. And so as a dad, you're even more connected. Not that he's a dad.
In this situation.
In this situation. So our energy is relayed to our children. So when we're tense, you'll notice your children are more fussy. So this is just a demonstration of that. Our Rosie doll has 2 little buttons on her hands right there. And so I'm going to have Jens touch the button on this hand. I'm going to touch the button on that hand. And then when we touch fingers, listen.
Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posy.
And we let go.
What?
Ring around the rosy, pocket
Right?
full of posy.
So we are full of electricity, and we are connected to each other by that energy.
Oh, that's fun. That's crazy.
Right? So
Yeah.
this kind of shows you when you have tension, when you have that energy, you're going to translate that energy, that tension to your babies. They feel it, and they're going to be a little bit more fussy. So if we can educate a dad or a new dad or a new mom, and so they're much more calm, they know what's going to go on, that's going to translate to a more calm baby, and we all want that.
Yeah. Wow, that makes sense. That really puts it right up there. It shows you how well that illustrates it.
Right.
Cool.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
So when we come into the exam room, generally the babies have been weighed by the pediatrician. The moms and dads know how much they are, the length and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are being monitored pretty much. My job is to check the spine. So I want to make sure that the spine is free of subluxation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the baby here. We generally, babies will have diapers on, just in case. But if we want to make sure that they're warm enough, but I need to see everything, and so I will have them take off their clothes, and so that we can check. What we want to check is mobility. So one of the first things that I'm going to do
Hang
is...
on. Let's move this in so
Okay.
everybody can see this, because I think this is important.
So at first we're going to check just general mobility. How is the body moving? So we want to make sure that their hips are moving smoothly. And what I do is I try to bring the baby's legs up to their face. And they've been in this position a lot during the birth process, so they should be pretty comfortable in this position. But when they're not, say for instance, I can't get their feet all the way up, then I know perhaps something in the low back, in the lumbar spine is out of alignment. Or if one hip is not moving, then I know there's a problem with the hip. So I want to be able to curl that back of theirs so that pretty much they're folded up just like they were in the womb. I want to be checking that to see if that's possible. Then I want to check their arms. Are their arms freely moving? Can they bring their arms up over their head? If their arms aren't freely moving, then it might be the shoulders themselves. Some of those positions that I showed you earlier when they are in the womb, or maybe they were born with a shoulder and their head tilted this way. Well, that's going to pull the little nerves that come from the side of the neck down into the arm, and that can make the arm not move as smoothly. So I'm going to check the arms and so forth. Then I'm going to turn the baby so that I can check their neck. And again, their neck, they have 7 bones in their neck just like we do, but they're really, really small. So I have to use my pinkies in order to check the motion of the neck, and we're making sure that the baby can turn without, see, on this baby doll is interesting, because if I turn her to the left, her whole body wants to turn. Well, that's what happens when there's a subluxation. The whole body turns rather than just the neck. The neck should be able to turn itself. So we're checking motion. Can they turn to the right? Can they turn to the left? Can they lift their head up? And can their head come down? And so we just want to hold them in our hands and then make sure that they can extend. So it's all very gentle, very slow, so that we're checking the baby, and we want to make sure that there's full range of motion, and if there's not, that's where we need to adjust. Then we turn the baby on their tummies. They have a little tummy time, and so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to see if they can bend their legs up. I'm going to check their little hips. I move their legs to make sure there's motion in the hips, and then we palpate up the spine. And again, it's just a 2 little finger process, and we find out if there's any subluxation in there. And if there is, then the adjustment is very light, usually with my hands. Usually I'll use the motion and do some gentle motions like that. If there's a baby that's stuck, for instance, they were stuck for maybe a month or so in the wrong position, and that subluxation is very hard and it's set, then what I'll use is an instrument called the activator. It's a spring activated instrument, and I can make it less tension or more tension, and it's like a hair's breadth. It sounds terrible, but what that does is that goes in and it moves the joints very quickly without much effort. The babies, they don't fuss. They like this. They like the way. And then finally, here's another instrument that I use if something has to happen. Maybe the baby was tilted in the wrong direction when they were being born, so they were tilted and I need to get them straight. What I'll do is I'll do a little pressure and just use my fingers, and the piece will drop. And then we'll make the adjustment that way. Again, it's very gentle, very slow. The babies love it. Sometimes, babies will be fussy because they hurt, but after we get done and adjusting the correct vertebra, then it's like they go to sleep. You can see even the little worry go off their face. They feel so much better. Another process that I do is when they're in the womb, uncomfortable, maybe in the wrong position, their little insides their intestine, there is a fascia that surrounds everything inside. The fascia surrounds the muscles, the intestines, the abdominal walls, and that gets a little bit twisted when they're in the wrong position for a long period of time. So sometimes what I'll do, if that's the case, they just can't get their feet up toward their face, and I find that there's tension in the tummy, what I'll do is I'll grab them by their little hips and I'll turn them upside down, and what they'll do is they'll start moving on their own and they're adjusting themselves. And then I've had colicky babies stop crying and go to sleep in this position. And a lot of parents are concerned, well, oh my gosh, they're upside down. But if you think about it, they've been upside down in the womb for how long? So it's not new to them, and it's very comfortable.
Cool. Wow, that was, I've seen you adjust babies, but getting to hear all about it and all the different things and how gentle it is, but also how involved it is, it's really exciting how, to be able to not only see it, but then also show it to you guys to kind of alleviate some fears. I know some people even have fears around it as an adult, right? They think these are like torture chambers or whatever, and they're not. So just to be able to demystify some of this stuff is really exciting for me. I don't know.
It's exciting for me too. And I was pregnant when I first started chiropractic care with my oldest daughter. That's how I got my first adjustment. And then after I had him in my last, or I was pregnant with him in my last trimester of college. And so we joke that he's a doctor too, because he was inside me when I graduated, so that made him a doctor by de facto. And so it was through my pregnancy with him that I learned about the Bradley childbirth experience. And then then it was his birth process was a wonderful experience. And then I learned more about taking care of children through the FICPA. So it's been a really beautiful road. I love adjusting babies, and it's my heart. It's one of my heart, things I love to do.
Anytime one of our patients has a baby or we've been working with a pregnant mommy, the first thing we want to know is when the baby's born and when we can see them.
Right. it's exciting.
It's
exciting.
Well, this has been great. I actually learned a lot, and I hope you guys learned a lot. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to let us know. If they want to find out more, you can always check out our website. We got a bunch of blogs and articles and stuff up on there. Or, come and see us. We like seeing people and talking with you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So until next time, if you have any other ideas or if you want to know anything else, let us know. Shoot us an email, comment on our Facebook post or our YouTube channel, and we'll try to answer them as best we can. But until next time, we'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.